Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Anthony Schell with us from Oakland, and he is with Colliers International. So Anthony, you have a very intriguing, interesting story about how you got into commercial real estate. So I'd love to hear how you got from Marin to Arizona and back to Oakland.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great to join you. Big fan of the podcast. So I'm born and raised in Marin County, and grew up there. I went to University of Arizona for my undergrad, and as I came back for every summer, I would wait tables back in Marin County during the summertime to make extra money. My older half brother, who's 12 years older than me, started out as a researcher at Cushman & Wakefield in Walnut Creek, eventually transitioned to being a broker in the Oakland market. I always looked up to my big brother, as you can imagine, like any little brother does, especially as I saw him begin to progress in the industry and kind of viewed his life as idyllic in some ways. And I always thought, gosh, I want that. And so my goal from a very early age was always to go into brokerage, to follow my brother. So yeah, I graduated from college in 2003, and began harassing my brother immediately for an opportunity at Cushman & Wakefield. As you likely are aware, '03 was a very rough time for the market. The ripples of the first dot-com bubble were still being felt by many, and I was told resoundingly, definitely not. You do not get an opportunity. You have no experience in the corporate world, and there's just not enough velocity in the market to help you. So after freaking out about it for about 6 months, I took the first job that came across my computer, which was part of the management trainee program at Enterprise Rent-A-Car in San Francisco.
Nice.
Not a big rental car guy, but it definitely taught me a lot about, waking up early every morning, getting dressed and looking presentable, and a lot of the kind of business corporate culture that exists in this world today. So that was in some ways a stepping stone for me to figure myself out in the corporate world.
Well, some of those training programs, like I suspect Enterprise, have great venues for getting people started.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. And not to besmirch the rental car industry at all. I know they're a powerhouse in that world. They were great. It was a great launching pad. It gave us an opportunity to learn how to be young adults in a professional setting, and I have nothing but good things to say about them.
Yeah, no, it's a great start. So then after Enterprise, where did you go?
After Enterprise, I transitioned quickly to mortgage brokerage, and was kind of part of that big mortgage boom. We were just doing A-paper. We were not doing any sketchy mortgage business back in the day. But I was there for about 2004 through 2005. I kind of began to see a little bit of the writing on the wall that mortgage velocity was down. It wasn't just this easy venue to earn a living anymore. And was strangely, in a strange way, I was headhunted by Bank of America locally in Marin. I had sent a recommendation letter for a bank manager that had helped me. And the manager of that office actually reached out to me with an opportunity in the business banking division, because of my background and kind of the language, I guess, initially that I used in this recommendation letter. And I joined Bank of America in the business banking division in Marin in late 2004, and was there through about beginning of 2006. I learned a lot from Bank of America, learned a lot about finance and whatnot, the inner workings of business and how they relate to capital and utilize capital in various ways. But it definitely, I felt as if the walls were closing in around me after about a year and a half, and began to really hammer my older brother about, hey, look, the market's turning and there's got to be an opportunity at some point. And thankfully, in about April of 2006, the opportunity presented itself. And as I mentioned, my first day at Cushman & Wakefield in Oakland was July 5th, 2006.
Yeah. So then you stayed at Cushman for a while and then went to another firm?
Yeah, we were at Cushman for about 9 years post that. My entry into brokerage was really interesting because my team had a bunch of listings in downtown Oakland, office listings. And a lot of brokers, when they start in the business, they are given a phone book or a sheet of contacts and a phone and said, begin banging the phones until you get, a meeting and we'll go and win the business. My entry had a little bit of that, but was more focused on actual transactions. So I was put on these listings, allowed to handle tours. As I mentioned previously, my time as a server at a restaurant really prepared me well, I think, for being a listing broker and really a broker in general, a tenant rep broker as well. But the ability to serve people food and be a great emissary for a restaurant when people come in, sit at your table, being able to explain to them the benefits and diminish the negatives of any environment, I think is an important role that brokers have, especially on the listing side when you're selling office space or trying to lease office space to prospective tenants who have likely just seen 8 other buildings that look eerily similar to yours. So how can you really stand out in a sea of these type of buildings? And so I really took it upon myself to really control that experience. Big smile, big energy, take your time, explain the benefits, all the highlights and whatnot. So I really credit my time as a server with, I think, setting me up for success in the brokerage world.
Well, 2006 through, well, almost the pandemic, Oakland office was expanding pretty nicely.
To a certain degree. So I began July 2006. I started 18 months before Lehman Brothers collapsed and the GFC began. So that was a little bit scary. But what's interesting about that time period from a broker standpoint is versus the time period that we're in now, where there's this big return to office battle and office activation and getting employees excited about coming to the office. The great financial crisis, there was none of that going on. So tenants were still occupying office space largely 5 days a week. And there was some financial instability concerns, but it was more business as usual for businesses to a certain degree. So there was still a lot of opportunity, I think, for us. My first kind of significant year in the brokerage business was 2010. So I was able to sort of identify opportunities for clients. In up times and downs, I think brokers have real opportunities for success. Even if a tenant is in bad shape that needs to sublease their space to get rid of excess space that they have, the opportunity still exists for a broker to solve that problem for our clients. And inevitably, at the end of the day, that's really what we're here to do, is to solve problems for clients on the real estate side. So I think that time, the great financial crisis, was a little bit different than what we're experiencing today, probably a lot different, just because of the whole return to office utilization kind of standpoint. So beginning, we were at Cushman through about mid 2014. We were headhunted by, at the time, the fastest growing commercial real estate brokerage in the world, which at the time was Avis and Young. They're a Canadian firm, very large in Canada, that was expanding their America's presence. They had opened a San Francisco office and were looking to open an East Bay office. And my business partner, brother, and I were headhunted to open, manage, and grow the East Bay presence for Avis and Young. That was in 2014. We grew the practice significantly, grew to a team of 4, in addition to our kind of 6 support staff that we had. For us, I think brokers can find value in both small shops and larger shops. There is no real estate nirvana. There's no perfect situation. So I think inevitably what we do as brokers is we look at the opportunities on the table. What skill sets do I have that I can bring to a brokerage? And what needs do brokerages have? If you have a brokerage, a large firm that has 20 office brokers and you're an office broker, probably isn't a lot of opportunity there for you because you're just going to be one of many. And so we kind of began to what we felt was wanting a little bit of a larger platform, more of a global reach, larger integrated service platform, and more support for the brokers. And we met at the time, new manager for Colliers in Oakland, Tony Burnett, and kind of began a conversation for there. And Father's Day 2023, we made the jump to Colliers, our 4-person team.
Oh, wow. Oh, 2023.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And then you stayed there for a few years, and now you're...
Yeah, we're still at Colliers now. So we were at Avis and Young beginning in 2014, and then we made the jump to Colliers in 2023. So I was at Avis and Young for just under 9 years.
Yeah. Okay. So have you expanded out from the office world and diversified?
Yes, we have. So I try to be a big part of the nonprofit community here in the ASBA. I've sat on 2 separate boards of nonprofits here. I currently sit on the board of Safe Passages, which is a very important, critically important nonprofit for at-risk youth and families, doing really important work across a kind of a gamut of different services that they offer. I sat on the board of Rockwood Leadership Institute for 10 years. They're the largest leadership training institute for nonprofit leaders in the country. So really had begun to entrench myself in the nonprofit community. getting into brokerage in the San Francisco Bay Area, every young broker's kind of push is, I want to go into tech brokerage because that's where the big booms are, the venture capital money, the big sexy leases that you hear about. I have always been a little bit of a contrarian to my benefit or to my detriment. But as all these other brokers were going more tech focused, I really wanted to go nonprofit focused. So that really shifted my focus for a large part of my career. Through that, I began doing more and more building purchases on behalf of my clients. So a big part of my business is helping owner users buy buildings. We have an integrated project management department that we cover the cost of for our clients, which helps with bidding, construction work, move coordination, project management, a variety of other services that we handle on behalf of our clients. And I wish I could say that this next shift for me was because of my brilliance that I foresee this downshift in the office world, but beginning in 2018, 2019, I began venturing more into the world of high-tech manufacturing, life science, and material science companies. In the East Bay, it's a large industrial market. There's only so much office product in general, and there's a ton of industrial space. And so that really is where a lot of the high-tech manufacturing groups. So beginning in 2018, 2019, I began to shift some of my focus towards those type of tenants and client partners. And like I said, I wish I could say that with COVID happening, and we say in the brokerage world, we say that COVID was the death of the office and retail world, and it was the wedding of the industrial and other worlds. So I wish I could say that was part of my brilliance, but it had nothing to do with that. It just happened to be just sheer luck, because that served me well, continuing to service clients that could not do their work from their home. So high-tech manufacturing and other groups like this, you absolutely have to be in the office or the warehouse for that type of work. And so that's been a big part of my business. So sort of nonprofit tenant representation. I do a lot of work in the professional services world. I have a couple multi-market accounts that I handle on behalf of engineering and other clients, and do a lot of building purchases on behalf of clients. That's usually where my business kind of lays. In addition to, we have about 1.2 million square feet of listings on behalf of Class A and B landlords across Oakland. We're lucky to represent some of the largest institutional players in the world, Beacon Capital, CalSTRS, TMG, KKR, just to name a few that we work with. So it's kind of nice doing both tenant and landlord rep on the office side. It gives you a chance to see how both sides feel about that, how about the other side, and how deals mechanics sort of work. And I think it's important. A lot of brokers sort of push the tenant rep only mindset. And I think that's a little bit sort of insufficient in sort of the reasoning for doing that, because it doesn't allow you to really understand the full picture of what landlords go through with contemplating transactions for various reasons. So I think that our team is a 4-person team here now in Colliers with a large kind of support staff behind us, doing a variety of work across office and high-tech manufacturing clients and the life and material science world, with a big focus on the nonprofit clients.
So is the construction arm part of Colliers, or is that a separate group?
So it is. We have integrated project management and construction management within Colliers. They've got a great team here locally that we're lucky to work with. My whole push within that was, I saw early on as a broker that we as brokers think so much about site selection and the surveying the market and finding the right space and touring and negotiating. And what I learned is that so much of it goes into what happens after the lease is signed. So brokers will do a great job with all this work, get the lease signed, and then we'll just kind of say, all right, good luck with the rest.
See you later.
To this tenant who has no idea about construction management. And my first experience with learning that all of these little vignettes that I have, or these reasoning for why I do my business the way I do now, it happened through trial and error. And my first sort of recollection of one of these experiences, I think, was in 2009. I was helping a small nonprofit group move from downtown Oakland to Jack London Square, and they asked me for recommendations on a moving company. And so I Googled moving companies, and I pulled the top 3, and sort of we collectively with the client just selected the least expensive one, without having any references or anything like that. And the mover on the moving day left one of my clients' desks in the elevator, and that resulted in us losing our security deposit. So that really began this journey of mine saying, if I want to do things the right way, I need to have these services covered for my clients. If having a project manager involved with the brokerage team costs some money, the right thing to do out of the commission of the deal is to cover those costs for the planning and whatnot. So my team integrates project management, move coordination, furniture planning. So we inventory everything the client has. We look at what the cost is to fill a space with pre-owned furniture or new furniture, and then eventual move. So we kind of cover the cost of all of that. Obviously, if a client wants to buy furniture, they're going to cover that cost. But our goal is to cover the entire planning and due diligence process so that the client has full visibility in all costs. Because I, once again, just found that every time something went wrong, it went wrong after the lease was signed. And I wanted to have my hands more invested in being a part of that from lease execution to deal commencement. And that was really where I saw the errors pop up.
So does that mean your commission is perhaps higher than the normal commission?
No, it means that I'm willing to take a cut on my commission so that my clients are served with full visibility. Project managers are available to every tenant out there, but it's a cost component. Project manager are not inexpensive. And so I just felt like by paying a certain rather small percentage of the overall fee to offer this visibility to my clients, I just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Well, it sounds like that amount of fee paid, it comes back in referrals and other information. It gets you a much larger picture, so to speak. So it's money well spent.
Exactly. That's always been my feeling, is that doing things the right way will lead you where you want to go, even if it means I am less transactional and I'm much more about the relationship. It makes me sick to my stomach thinking about experiences that I've had where something has gone wrong after the lease is signed that I wasn't involved in. And I just wanted to take more ownership of that. If I'm really going to be your I like to refer to myself as kind of concierge style broker. Anything you need related to your space, I want to help you solve for that. And even if it's just a data telco IT person, I want to make sure that you're hooked up with the right person. So it goes big and small. I always like to tell my clients, call me for anything big and small. And so I can help kind of usher the right move in place.
So does Colliers have a property management department also?
They do have property management, yes.
Yeah. So a lot of the buildings that you represent are also in the property management mode.
To be honest, not so much. Colliers has a strong property management division in other parts of the country. I will say that we are looking to strengthen our property management team here locally in the Bay Area. We're not currently working with property management on the Colliers side at our listings, but it's definitely something that's top of mind in a growth area for us going forward.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Colliers is kind of going out. Have other Colliers offices sort of replicated your project management ideas?
I'm not sure. I am naive to think that other brokerages, some of my competitors, don't do the same thing. I'm sure that they do. But I believe that it's the right thing. I speak to this a lot for my business partners in the multi-market areas where I work across the country and the world. And it seems to really strike a chord with a lot of the brokers that I explain to them that this is the way that I do things. And, the project management, the PM fee is going to come off of the commission that we get because it's simply the right thing to do. It's going to make all of our lives easier, even though it's a little bit less money. It is going to make our life and the client's experience, which is inevitably is the most important thing, so much better.
So, okay, let's talk a minute about the current atmosphere in Oakland. You have a new mayor. You have people coming back to the office. You're working on the industrial side. So how is Oakland doing?
Oakland is doing, I would give it a solid okay. Oakland has long been a spillover market from San Francisco. And that kind of changed beginning in 2013, 2014, as San Francisco came out of the GFC and got very, very busy. We began seeing spillover into Oakland beginning in 2014. And what we also saw was sort of interesting was from a lot of the big tech users in San Francisco, a lot of the engineering talent was getting older and they were having families and kids. And if you know anything about the Bay Area, you know that it is very expensive to buy and raise a family in San Francisco, really across the entire Bay Area, but especially in San Francisco. So what we saw was a lot of the senior engineering talent was buying homes in the East Bay, in Orinda, Moraga, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, San Leandro, Oakland, et cetera. And so as a result, a lot of the large tech companies wanted to have an office close to their talent. They wouldn't lose talent to competitors who might have an office over here. So we began to see big names spill over, household names coming over here, tech companies. And that spurred institutional landlords to say, wait, if the big name tech companies are in Oakland, then we should be buying office buildings and leasing them to the tech talent. And so that really began Oakland's big surge beginning in 2014. I believe it was third quarter of 2015, Oakland saw the fastest rent growth in the entire world of any submarket tract for Q3 2015. So you saw a big spike, and you saw all of the major institutional players begin coming into Oakland in a significant way. Private equity companies, very large institutional landlords. And we really saw a big run all the way through end of 2019. And then COVID happened. And COVID really kind of caught Oakland very flat-footed. I think it caught a lot of our metropolitan areas flat-footed. Everyone was home. No one was in the office. And as people retreated back, core markets like San Francisco, like Manhattan and others really benefited from that, with having more people coming back to the main offices. So Oakland really has continued to struggle in terms of regaining its footing from an office standpoint. We're still north of roughly 30% vacancy, depending on how you kind of slice the data between A and B buildings in the different areas in Oakland. But what's been really telling to us is, as a listing team in downtown Oakland with over 1 million square feet of listings, and that includes Class A towers all the way down to kind of Class B creative buildings. The last couple quarters, we have noticed a big decline in touring activity from clients, from tenants. And that includes professional services, startups, tech, nonprofit, sort of everyone. And I was sort of banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out what is the reason for this. Obviously, it's a number of different things. Return to office mandates. Oakland's been very slow to require employees back at the office. We have a large federal and state contingent here, as well as the city of Oakland government. That was very slow to return to the office, so that's been challenging. As I spliced the data further, though, recently my research team and I discovered something, was that when you combine net absorption, so the amount of space that is leased versus the amount of space that comes available in a quarter, sort of how much is being absorbed into the market, and you add on leasing activity, overall volume, we noticed that Oakland is the slowest recovering market out of all the major indexes that is tracked across the country.
Oh, wow.
So Oakland has been very slow to kind of recover from a data standpoint. From a kind of boots on the ground standpoint, what we're seeing is San Francisco is very, very busy right now. They've notched their second quarter in a row of really big positive absorption, big leasing activity. But what you still see in San Francisco is pockets of space where it's, compared to Oakland, it's still rather inexpensive in San Francisco. Waterfront Plaza is a great example. That's the area that is next to Levi's Plaza, close to the Ferry Building in San Francisco.
Right.
They have good quality kind of Class A minus B plus space and professional buildings that are mid 50s on the rent. And in Oakland, you're looking at somewhere between $30 to $40 for kind of the lower tier Class B to Class A, and then sort of $45 to $60 on the high end Class A. But when you're comparing those, where Oakland has won against San Francisco in the past, from a value proposition standpoint for tenants considering Oakland or San Francisco, is what is the delta between Oakland and San Francisco in rents, right? And what we have found is when that delta dips below 25 to 20%, it really becomes more challenging for Oakland to land those tenants, because San Francisco is a global city and kind of a household name and whatnot. So that has really challenged Oakland this year. When we were coming out of 2024, sort of wishfully thinking that the worst was behind us, we coined this saying, which was stay alive until 25, right? Yeah. And that quickly shifted now to persist until 26. And I'm really hoping that I don't have to come up with another little slogan about it, because I can't rhyme anything with 27. So I'm totally cooked. Yeah, I'm totally cooked on that. But, I'm eternally optimistic. I think Oakland is an amazing city, and it has a lot of value to be here as a city. I just think it needs a little bit more positive momentum, I guess you would say. Samuel Merritt University opening their large campus in City Center, Oakland, beginning of next year will be a big shot in the arm. Having the federal and state workforce back in the office, some amount of days per week, will be a big shot in the arm, especially for retail. Getting more coffee shops and sandwich shops and lunch and places to eat, drink, and be merry. Having that sort of street life activity is strangely so important to the office world. Even just as a broker on a day-to-day basis, when you're walking around the streets, walking from building to building to go to tour, there is a big emotional shift when you have vibrant places open and people out in the street versus shuttered storefronts. So I think once those things to happen, I'm confident that in conjunction with San Francisco continuing its positive trajectory, San Francisco getting as busy as it is now usually marks a 6 to 12 month inflection point for Oakland when we will begin to see that spillover back in the city. So I feel like those variety of things happening, I'm hoping that middle of next year, we're beginning to see a big tide shift in the downtown Oakland office market.
That sounds fantastic. I'm thinking that we should talk again in 3 to 6 months and see how that shift is coming along here. See how that prediction is going.
I know. I'll have to have a new saying for 27, I think, if it comes up. But I think they always say in real estate, location, location, location is everything. And we are obviously the closest city to San Francisco. So for whatever you say of Oakland's challenges, that location, the built environment that exists right behind me with all of the institutional capital that came into the market 2014, 2015, bought buildings, built buildings, renovated spaces. There's a ton of amazing space, steps from BART, steps from public transit, and with great amenities. We saw this war for amenities at the end of the 2018 cycle, 2019 cycle, where large institutional investors looking to get that VC-backed tech talent that was coming to Oakland, they just went crazy on amenities, which would definitely never happen right now with where rents are. No. But you have this incredible built environment where you have amazing gyms and new lobbies and what have you. So with prices as deflated as they are now, I think there's real opportunities for tenants looking for great space in downtown Oakland that's 15 minutes from downtown San Francisco.
So do you spill over into Pleasanton and Walnut Creek at all?
We do. We do a lot of work with our partners over there. Definitely a different market over there, much more focused on professional services. It was interesting. I did a survey for a client considering Walnut Creek recently, an office user about 10,000 feet, really wanted creative space, really wanted exposed ceilings, creative finishes, of which we have a ton in San Francisco and in Oakland to some degree. I reached out to some of my business partners over there to kind of inquire on, hey, what options exist for my clients that are creative, existing condition. And they could not give me one option that had a blown out ceiling. So, and what that says to me is that Walnut Creek and this, Concord's another great submarket of Walnut Creek. They just haven't had the tech move that way to kind of elicit that type of build out in various spaces, but still a great area, amazing shopping and retail. Walnut Creek is similar to Oakland in that the public transit, the BART route, is really well positioned right next to the office. San Francisco has the BART spine run right up market, of course, so everything builds off of that. But I think Walnut Creek, one of the big benefits of it is the professional services sort of depth that's there. A lot of architects, engineering, et cetera, et cetera. And the proximity to where people live, where people eat and drink and whatnot. So really interesting market and one to keep an eye on. I think Concord also, more specifically, is a great value right now. Good quality Class A space near BART with good amenities for fractions of the cost of what it costs to go to San Francisco. So I think that's another area to keep an eye on.
Well, Walnut Creek, actually, I hadn't been out there for a while, and I went out, I don't know, a while back, and I was just sort of shocked at the amenities and the restaurants. And I don't know if that's still going after the pandemic, but it sort of surprised me that it was kind of a hot spot at that time.
Yeah, definitely. Perception is reality in some ways, and I think Walnut Creek is perceived, and rightfully so. I think because it's reality, as a very safe area to have your business. Not a lot of changes, not really from a security standpoint, but more just I think a safe place close to where people live. I mean, a lot of people know Walnut Creek and the shopping that's there, so it's sort of I think almost a sexy city to be located in, Walnut Creek. If you're in the Bay Area, Walnut Creek, and you probably know the shopping there and whatnot. So I think it's an interesting area and tenants to feel comfortable being in versus some other areas in the Bay Area.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point that, Walnut Creek, although it's a pretty small office market, isn't it? Or am I mistaken?
Very, very, very small. Very small.
Yeah. So bigger people. I mean, 2003, a lot of tech firms were actually moving to the East Bay, and then of course the tech boom busted in that time period. But that I don't think that ever really came back. I mean, our two kids actually moved to Oakland during the pre-pandemic period when Temescal was hot and all those things were going on. I mean, Oakland was really moving forward at that time, and it just seems like such a shame to me that it hasn't kind of bounced back yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was, as I mentioned earlier, why I was sort of banging my head against the wall like a few months ago, trying to figure out what the reason for this slow recovery is.
Mm.
I cross 1.2 million of listings. We usually see a couple tours a week, across a variety of our listings, and it
Right.
was one every 2 weeks, one, a couple, and it was sort of this eerily quiet feeling. So I think the recovery slowness in Oakland is, a couple different points. It feels from a broker boots on the ground standpoint who works in downtown Oakland every day, the traffic feels like it's going to San Francisco right now. It feels like no, very few. I know currently in the market, we've actually seen a few more this week that have popped up of tenants from San Francisco looking in Oakland.
Mm.
But right now it feels like all the local AI talent and AI companies that are coming out of UC Berkeley
Yeah.
and, migrating Berkeley to Emeryville. Oakland was usually the next growth stage for them as a company location. It feels like that is all going to San Francisco right now because pricing is still pretty deflated in the city compared to pre-pandemic highs.
Well, that was
But
actually a
yeah,
question I had about uh, the BART and using mass transit. It seemed like a lot of people were getting in their cars lately, and is that starting to pick up? Do you know?
it is. It is starting to pick up. We're seeing BART ridership pick up quite a bit. And you're right. I think the initial knee-jerk reaction of COVID because of the pandemic was that definitely don't want to be on a BART train, and you know what
Right.
I mean. Everyone's driving. It feels like it's come back in a major way. BART trains are packed these days
Oh, good.
in the morning and the afternoon. BART ridership, we can see from the BART website, is up significantly. We're looking at some of the card swipes at various buildings we have. Occupancy is growing quite rapidly. Monday through Friday in the office was hallowed ground prior to the pandemic.
Right.
It feels like now the norm is definitely Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. People are in the office.
Right.
And now more and more, it feels like Monday through Thursday is the new norm. Friday, for better or worse, may be gone forever. But I think Monday through Thursday feels like the new norm. I think it's critically important, and I swear to you, I'm not just saying this as someone who sells and leases office space for a living. I feel like the in-office experience is critically important for so many different reasons. Collaboration, camaraderie, culture. For young people coming into the business, I almost feel bad in some ways for young people entering the workforce because if they've had an experience with working remotely or working from their couch, the idea of coming into the office is horrendous to them. But in reality, the challenge for a young person coming into the workforce these days to try to get ahead or get a promotion or be, it is absolutely critical that you are in the office and around the hoop, staying close to the rim as shots are being taken, to kind of learn and get that exposure. I think it's so important. So I think the world has figured that out. More and more data comes out that suggests that in office more, at least Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the best workflow efficiency sort of structure. And I'm confident that will continue. I think that to a certain degree, I've always said when this whole remote work thing came up during COVID, if companies can figure out a way to work remotely, they likely already had prior to COVID, and more power to them. If you're able to run a company effectively from your couch, like that's amazing. And but there's so many benefits in my experience to having an office, although it is a cost that companies bear and all the associated costs that comes with having an office. In my experience, it is just way above in a remote type of environment that you have.
No, I think that is absolutely coming out, and more companies are, forcing their employees to come in 2 to 3 days a week at least. So I think that trend is going to continue. There are certain companies, obviously, that can work remotely and have been successful doing it, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all moves forward, and hopefully that's going to benefit Oakland in a big way here shortly.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of akin to what I mentioned earlier about how institutional landlords before COVID were coming into Oakland and investing so much money in amenities.
Mm.
A similar sort of dynamic was going on between employer and employee in the tech world, where
Okay.
employers were doing anything they could to keep their engineering talent. And I think that their ability to allow their team to work remotely when COVID happened, I think it was in some ways probably health related or safety related
Mm.
regarding the initial concerns of what the pandemic was. But then it began being just that employees in the tech world really just wanted to continue to work remotely. And I think that shift, that dynamic shift has already occurred, where it feels as if employers now have the upper hand to make those decisions. And if you really, as an employee or someone in the workforce, feel strongly that you want a remote job, I'm sure there are jobs for you, out there.
Right.
But it feels as if you want to work for a certain company in the tech world or in the engineering world or aerospace world, it feels more and more like employers are sort of determining that forcing employees to come back to the office at least 3 days a week is the right thing to do for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And unfortunately, those students that came through the pandemic in the college years and the high school years, it's tough for them to get kind of back into the extroverted world and really function well. So anyway, I think hopefully we're over that hump, but we will find out very soon, I think.
We will. We will.
Well, this has been fantastic. Anthony, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my email is my name with a dot in the middle. It's anthony.shell, Shell, at Colliers, Colliers.com. My phone number is 415-871-5279. Feel free to call me, text me if anyone ever has any needs or questions, concerned about things in their office space leases or warehouse facilities or anything related to your real estate. I'm also big on LinkedIn, so look me up on LinkedIn at Anthony Shell.
Very good. Well, I look forward to talking to you again in the near future. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all transitions over the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, persist until 26, Bruce.
Okay, I'm going to come up with I think it's going to be, sorry, we have no space in 27.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I go with that.
All right. All right. Well, great to talk to you. We will see you down the road here.
Thanks so much for your time, Bruce.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.